Thanks everybody for coming. Today is once again another meetup. Hope to educate you guys on wallets. So we know a little bit about wallets over here. Once again, my name is Puey. I am CEO, co-founder of Airbitz. This is our home here at Union Cowork, our co-working space that also takes Bitcoin. I've been a Bitcoin user since about April of 2013. Software engineer, used to work over at NVIDIA and Chromatic Research. I'm happy to leave a lot of the software engineering to our great developers here at Airbitz as opposed to myself. And prior to getting into Bitcoin, I was a small business owner and manager. So getting an opportunity to merge some of the skills from engineering with dealing with small business and business interaction with consumers. So today we're going to talk about Bitcoin wallets. The title of this presentation is Wallets Balancing Ease of Use, Security, and Privacy. Quick question. I feel like I've got quite a handful of pretty experienced users here. Who here has used more than, say, 3 or 4 different wallets? So, good handful of experienced users. So I'll try to breeze through some of the basics, such as this slide. So obviously, a Bitcoin wallet at its heart is simply 2 keys, a public and a private key. And that's all you really need. That in itself is a wallet, but we need software to make it actually more useful. And there's different styles of Bitcoin wallets and different kinds of software. They generally fall into 2 different camps. One type of wallet software is one such that the user holds their own private keys, especially giving them the ability to send and receive funds without anyone else's permission and without the need for a central authority. On the opposite side, you have what we call server-owned private key wallets or hosted wallets. This basically takes the current banking system and the banking model and applies it to Bitcoin. So this is where you have another person, another entity, another organization that holds your private keys, and in order to send or receive, you request sending or receiving funds from them. And there's different pros and cons to each of these 2 styles of wallets. And then even further, beyond those 2 styles of wallets, we have what we call hot wallets, or cold wallets, offline wallets, or online wallets. And in addition to that, we also have multi-signature wallets, which are gaining a tremendous amount of traction in a lot of the wallet space today. It helps add a lot of security and consensus amongst different groups of people that may share funds. So this is a huge balancing act. You've got different priorities that different people have, especially in security, privacy, ease of use, and you have the different styles of wallets, and you kind of need to ask yourself, well, what should I be using depending on my skill level, my comfort level, and also what do I value? Do I value security? Do I value privacy? And how competent am I at the technical aspects of Bitcoin? So we'll go down various types of wallets. I'll cover different companies that develop certain kinds of wallets and some of the pros and cons of those architectures. So in user-owned private key wallets, here are some examples. Are there any, here's a good question, are there any of these wallets that people here have not heard of? Or has everyone here heard of every single wallet on this screen?
Yes.
Almost raised a hand?
Some that I've...
Which ones are unfamiliar? Which one's unfamiliar? And I can kind of go into more detail about that one.
Blockchain and Hive I use. Mycelium I've heard of, but I've never actually used it.
Okay.
Electron, same way.
Okay, so multi-bit might be unfamiliar. Bitcoin QT is the core Bitcoin wallet. It's actually called Bitcoin Core now. My slide's a little bit out of date. That was the original implementation by Satoshi. Armory is built upon hardcore security. It's a desktop wallet. It relies on the Bitcoin Core. Dark Wallet is a Chrome extension. And Airbitz is a wallet that's coming out pretty soon. That's what we're working on. So the pros of a wallet that allows the user to hold their own private keys. Generally, you can get better privacy. You can, not necessarily true, but generally you can get much better privacy because you're not relying on a third party to do your sends and receives. Ownership of funds. Your funds can't be seized or frozen as long as you hold your private keys, once again. More importantly, there's no counterparty risk. You're not at the risk of a third party folding or being compromised and having your funds, once again, seized or frozen, or not being able to spend your funds. And then reliability. This is obviously very dependent on the implementation, and I'll go into that further, but when you own your own private keys, you have the ability to send and receive directly to the network, as opposed to relying on a central server to do your sending and receiving, and that can increase your reliability greatly. And I know a handful of people here have ran into issues with centralized hosted wallets and not being able to reliably send and receive. So some of the cons. Responsibility. This is probably the biggest one. A lot of people in the Bitcoin space, or people especially just entering the Bitcoin space, aren't accustomed to the amount of responsibility required. It's an unfamiliar usage case to have ownership of your money directly, especially digital money. People aren't used to the concept of backing up their money. This is kind of a weird concept. What do you mean back up my money? I've never had to back up my money before. Encrypt my money. I've never had to do that before either. These are very unfamiliar usage cases for people, and this is what people will have to get accustomed to if they want to own their own private keys. Risk of loss, damage, and theft. Obviously, if you have another entity holding your money, that is a risk, but you put it onto them versus yourself. And a really big one, I know this has been a hot topic of discussion internally within our company as well as outside, but when you own your own private keys and you encrypt them, you cannot lose the password. You simply can't, because it's an encryption password. There is no server, there's no one else out there that can suddenly grant you access to the money that you've encrypted. So it's a huge thing that was actually the topic of debate between the co-founders of blockchain.info. At the time they were co-founders, blockchain.info and Coinbase. They were going to be co-founders of a wallet, and they disagreed on this one fundamental fact. Can we recover someone else's password? And because of that, we now have two very, very divergent companies. Both very successful with almost the equivalent amount of wallets in the ecosystem, but with very different philosophies. In essence, because they disagreed on this one fact. So key questions to ask yourself when you're deciding on a wallet that you want to use. How do you back it up? Is it even possible to back it up? Is it automatically done for you? And does that backup just include your private keys? Or does it also include your transactional data? If you have any metadata with a transaction, is that included as well? The encryption. Is your wallet encrypted? How strongly is it encrypted? Now, this is a difficult question to answer if you don't have a technical background, but definitely ask around. Ask me. I can kind of tell you some of the levels of encryption or password hashing that some of these wallets give you. And also importantly, is as soon as you have your wallet and it's capable of receiving funds, is it encrypted before any possible use? Meaning, if you can receive funds, was it already encrypted? Or was unencrypted data sitting out there on your device, on the web, and someone may have had access to that data even before you receive the funds? Then it's severely compromised. And is unencrypted data stored on your device at any point in time? Key questions to ask. And then decentralization. Does your wallet require centralized servers to operate? Are you relying on a third party, even if you own your private keys? Just owning your private keys is part of the equation. The other half is, well, do I need someone else in order to spend it based on the software? Do I have to go through a lot of effort to pull the private key out in order to send and use the software? And does the wallet require any personal information? Do they require your actual real name, email, or a phone number? And if they do, that gives up some aspect of the privacy that is in that balance, that trinity of balance that we're looking for in a wallet. So hosted wallets. Some classic examples. Coinbase. I think almost everybody here has probably heard of Coinbase. They're a great place to buy and sell Bitcoin. Link up your bank account, ACH transfer, and there you go. In addition, they act like a wallet as well. They have a mobile app. You can send and receive Bitcoin through their mobile app, and you can send to other people. Circle, Easy Wallet, CoinKite, CoinSafe. There are other examples of hosted wallets where other people own your funds and you entrust them to those funds. Some of the pros, this is probably the biggest thing, is they're huge on ease of use, or at least they try to be. One of the things that makes them easier to use is that they're familiar. Since they're effectively a bank, they feel like a bank. And when it feels like a bank, it feels familiar because that's what we've been used to for the past several decades. So it feels like setting up PayPal. There's no real need to back up. I mean, you can back up. Some allow you to back up your funds. But for the most part, since they own them, they do the backup, they do the encryption, not you. They also allow you to send and receive funds via email and SMS. That's because you're not really sending Bitcoin. You're simply sending a ledger transfer internally within their ecosystem, such as when you do a transfer with PayPal. No funds get really sent when you transfer money from one PayPal account to another. They only get sent when that person pulls it out of PayPal. So within a closed ecosystem, it is more convenient. They integrate with buy-sell. They have that opportunity to do that integration, such as Coinbase and Circle. And because they own your money, they can give you password recovery options over email or SMS, which is what we're used to. So some of the cons. You obviously do require trust in the banking model, which over the course of the past 10 years, we've slowly reduced our trust in. You do have counterparty risk. If that entity goes away, such as Mt. Gox, you will lose your money if you don't pull it out in time. And your setup can require verification. Almost certainly, at least in the US, there's significant regulation that either has been passed or likely will be passed that are going to regulate these types of wallets because they effectively are banks. And it's going to require them to host a good amount of information on their user. Funds can be seized and frozen. Host knows all of your transactions. Everything is wide open. So you've lost a significant amount of privacy to the host of your wallet. Here's an interesting thing too, is that it's a huge target for hackers. If you own your own private keys, you own just your money. So if all of us in this room had a non-hosted wallet, we owned our own private keys, then a hacker would have to attack each of us somewhat individually. And they'd also have to know which of our devices held any value. With a hosted wallet, you're looking at a centralized entity that hosts a lot of people's money. And so they become a central target. Call it somewhat of the piñata effect. And whoever cracks open that piñata gets everyone's prize. And here's an interesting thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, which is a user experience issue with centralized hosted wallets, which is the unreliable sending of funds. When you have a hosted wallet, you're balancing the ability to hold everyone's funds available for spending at any one time with security. In order for someone to spend money out of a hosted wallet, the server that hosts that wallet needs to have enough money for you to spend. If all of us here put in a Bitcoin into, say, Coinbase, they'd have maybe 20, 30 Bitcoin in that pool. Now, if somebody wanted to spend, if everybody wanted to spend 1 Bitcoin, they'd have to have all of that available on the server at the same time. But that's a huge security risk. So companies like Coinbase make the decision to hold a lot of the funds offline in cold storage. They've actually come out and said that we hold over 95% of our funds offline. So if all of us had 1 Bitcoin on a hosted wallet and 95% of that was unavailable, then anyone trying to spend more than 5% of the pool would not be able to spend their money. Or if a bunch of us, if half of us wanted to spend our money at the same time, that money can't be spent until someone physically goes to a safe, unlocks some USB keys or some paper wallets, and reloads that safe. And I've personally experienced with a hosted wallet the inability to send funds. And when I say inability to send funds, it's not that it takes a long time to confirm. It takes a long time just for the transaction to hit the network. I've tried to spend, and out of about 20 to 30 attempts at spending, I've had about 5 to 6 fail and take anywhere from 45 minutes to hit the network to 18 hours to hit the network. And if you're trying to purchase through a payment processor such as BitPay, they give you about 15 minutes of the invoice to be able to pay that invoice locked at that specific rate. Otherwise, the invoice disappears. And so unfortunately, I make that payment. It doesn't go through until hours later. That invoice is expired, but the payment has already been locked, meaning it's already going to go through. I just don't know when it's going to happen. That happened to a friend of mine that actually I convinced to go buy some Bitcoin. He bought some Bitcoin, used the same wallet to make a purchase, and I forgot to tell him, hey, by the way, transfer your money out for your purchases. He made his very first purchase on Tiger Direct, tried to buy a graphics card, and that exact thing happened to him. He was 0 for 1. He went to go buy a graphics card, made the payment, a couple $100 worth, didn't go through, happened to go through maybe a couple hours later. He was stuck making phone calls to Tiger Direct, which didn't know anything about it, then talking to his wallet provider that didn't know anything about it. He said, oh, the money went through. Then had to talk to the payment processor who eventually refunded his money. So it's a huge user experience nightmare when it fails. A lot of the time it doesn't fail, but it's definitely failed quite a bit for me. And it's a problem that's really, really hard to solve, especially as Bitcoin grows. So key questions to ask if you're going to use a hosted online wallet. How much of the funds are kept offline? Great question to ask. And how are they stored? How are they backed up? Do people have access to your funds? And what does it require for them to have access to your funds? Does it require 5 high-level executives to all say, okay, I'm going to unlock funds from cold storage? Or does it require one peon at the front desk saying, okay, I need to reload the hot wallet? So ask some of those questions. How much personal info is required? Some require a ton, some require your name and address. And how valuable is that to you? Two-factor authentication, do they have it? That allows you to make sure people don't hack into your account without a second device. Not just your login and password, but another device. And insurance, this is a big thing that's coming up now, especially with hosted wallets, is now they're starting to offer insurance. But that's all they have typically said in a lot of these press releases, that we're going to insure wallets. The question asked is, well, what's the policy? And most importantly, what disqualifies the insurance? I've heard of some wallets that offer insurance up to $100 worth of Bitcoin. That's nearly nothing. And they disqualify it if you don't set up your account in specific ways, such as enabling two-factor, which might not be on by default. So definitely key questions to ask when you do use a hosted wallet. So let's go into kind of the subcategories of hosted or user-owned private key wallets, which are hot, cold, and multi-sig, and these can apply across the board. So hot wallets, anyone who's used Bitcoin has probably used a hot wallet because you probably generated it on a computer that had access to the internet, whether it's your phone or your computer, tablet, or whatnot. These are where private keys are held on a device with online access, or they were created offline, but then brought onto a computer that has online access. They're great for day-to-day spending. They're easy to use. They are less secure, but there's a lot of things that can be done to make them significantly secure. But they're the most convenient. Pretty much for spending, you need a hot wallet. Cold wallets. I define a cold wallet as a wallet where the private keys were generated on a device that has never seen connection to the online world, and that the keys, once they're generated, stay on a device or a physical object, such as paper, that has never seen the online world. As soon as you change that, I personally don't consider it cold storage. People may argue with that. But this is great for large asset storage. This is when you're putting savings account, a significant investment into Bitcoin. Cold storage is what people are mostly looking at. It's the best level of security that you can get, but it's also the least convenient, because once you want to spend, just like the hosted wallets, you have to go take something out of physical paper and bring it onto a server or onto a hot wallet. And then multi-sig, this is really the trend of the future, and I'm excited about it, and a lot of the industry is as well. And this is a way to achieve a great level of security, but still be mostly online, although you can apply multi-signature to an offline wallet as well. And it simply requires multiple people or multiple keys to sign a transaction. It's the programmable aspect of Bitcoin. You can require 2 people or 2 signatures out of 3 or 3 out of 5 to sign before a transaction is made. And that's tied to a specific address. So an address that can receive money, built into that address can be the requirement that it requires 2 out of 3 signatures in order to spend. And multi-sig can be hot or cold. It could be hosted or non-hosted. You can apply it any way you'd like. So the importance of privacy. We talked about security, a little bit on ease of use. Let's talk a little bit about privacy and, of course, how you can improve it in using a Bitcoin wallet. So first is we got to admit, Bitcoin is just not anonymous. It's very, very not anonymous. Every send and receive that you make is completely out in the clear, out in the public. Everyone can see it. It's just that you don't have your name necessarily attached to it, but you may have your IP address indirectly attached to it. A lot of people have a bad connotation or association with the word anonymity, and they think it's just for illicit use, but really it's not. I try to use the word privacy when talking to people that don't like the word anonymity. The two are inherently the same. But think of businesses that are using Bitcoin. Having poor privacy means you're exposing a lot of your business transactional information to competitors. And from an individual level, imagine exposing to all of the people that you interact with how much money you make. If an employee were paid in Bitcoin and received money at the exact same address every single time, every 2 weeks or twice a month they receive their Bitcoin at that address, and they use that same one address to spend money, every time they spend money, they're exposing basically what they're earning, their earnings amount, to whoever they spend money to. Important aspect too, on a side note, but really important, is also a lot of people think that, hey, I'm doing everything legal, I'm abiding by the law, what do I need to hide? And that's where I think a lot of people are mistaken, is that what you're doing today might be legal, but it's not necessarily legal tomorrow. And we'd like to think that when the laws change, it's what we do after the laws change that we're going to be held accountable for. But that's not necessarily true. And it definitely wasn't true in the 1960s during the Cultural Revolution of China, where a lot of people were imprisoned, tortured, and actually executed for speaking out against the government. And they did that when it was still legal. And as soon as the revolution happened and laws had changed, those people were seeked out and persecuted. So we hope that we don't live in a society that would do that to us today, but even on a smaller level, realize that what you do, although legal today, might not be tomorrow. And also understand that the legal system is built around it being fuzzy. It's really hard to tell what is legal and what isn't. There's a reason why we have law school. It's hard to know what the law is. And there was a study of one lawyer who tried to understand all of the laws and collect it all into one book to find out what is legal and what isn't, and it was impossible. Yet at the same time, the law says that lack of knowledge of the law is not a reason why you broke it. Yet at the same time, no lawyer can know what all the laws are. So if you think you're not breaking the law, ask yourself, do you know all the laws to begin with? So it's important to be anonymous. So increasing privacy. What are the key things you can look for in a wallet to help increase your privacy? So first thing is using a non-hosted wallet. Because as soon as you go with a hosted wallet, that host knows everything you're doing. Simple as that. The biggest thing, the lowest hanging fruit in increasing your privacy with a wallet is changing your addresses. And there's a handful of wallets that do implement changing of addresses, but look for that when you're looking for a wallet. If you use the same address over and over and over again, you're giving up an insane amount of privacy. You're actually giving up more privacy than if you used a hosted wallet. Because at least with a hosted wallet, all the addresses are mixed and mingled. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine as far as addresses. So use a wallet that changes addresses. Look for one that doesn't ask for any user data, and usually it's going to be a non-hosted wallet. Tor compatibility. How many of you here have heard of or have not heard of Tor? Everybody's familiar with Tor. There's one or two people. Tor is a way of anonymizing your internet access, so you don't expose what your IP address is when you connect to various servers. Be aware that when you utilize Tor, connecting to the regular internet, even though you're connected to Tor, is still a huge anonymity hole. So you only achieve pretty good anonymity if you're connecting to servers that are inside of the Tor network. Once they have to go outside of the Tor network, you've lost a lot of your privacy. Decentralized servers. So even if you have your own private keys, if every single time you send and receive money, you're sending it to the exact same server that knows your IP address, then you're kind of giving up a handful of your anonymity and privacy. So look for a solution that allows you to connect to multiple different servers out there. Stealth addresses, these allow you to publish a key, a number, an address out to the internet, and people can send money to you without exposing which actual public address that money is getting sent to. It's a somewhat complex technology, but look for that keyword. Several wallets will be coming out with support. Dark Wallet right now, I believe, is the only one that supports it to this day. CoinJoin is a way of mixing funds. It's basically a technology that mixes. A lot of the power in CoinJoin, however, is when people use it. The more people that are using some of these technologies, the better the privacy and anonymity is. The fewer people that use it, well, then those people just stick out like a sore thumb. So the goal is to make it easy, and there are going to be wallets that'll make these type of technologies easier. Right now, it's going to be for the people that can handle things that are not easy to use. CoinJoin is not easy to use. It's available right now on the blockchain wallet using what they call shared coin, but it's definitely an intimidating feature. But if you value your privacy, it's something that you can use. And then prefix queries. This is something that's little known. How many people here actually run a Bitcoin Core full node, entire blockchain, as their wallet? 2 people. So we got 2 people that host the entire blockchain on their computer, I assume, because you can't host it on your phone. So if you don't host the entire blockchain on your computer, you're running either an SPV or a very, very simple, trusted client-server architecture wallet. If you're running a client-server architecture wallet, anytime you want to receive funds or send funds, you're talking to the server. You're trusting the server. And when you request funds, you're typically going to request funds for a specific address. You're going to say, hey, I have this address. I'd like to know what came into that address. And now you're giving up that level of privacy. Like this device is constantly asking for funds from this one address or this two address or three addresses. Prefix queries are a technology that's coming down the pipe that's being supported by the technology stack that we're utilizing. And it allows a client to request a prefix of addresses, meaning that it can request for the first 5 digits of an address, and it just gets back a ton, not a ton, a handful of responses, a lot of which it doesn't actually care about. So it masks your privacy amongst a little bit more noise. So you can't say, oh, this is the address that this person wanted, because what you wanted was really a smaller amount of information than the traffic that came to you. So some of the things that you can do for privacy. So now, what do we do about it here at Airbitz? So we'll go into some of the detail of our technology and how we balance all of these: security, privacy, and ease of use. Because we value all three of those pretty strongly. With respect to security and safety, number one, we're designing a wallet where everything is encrypted locally, client-side, 100%. It never leaves your device until it's 100% encrypted. We use native C++ code for you technology people. That's coding as close to the metal as you can, and that allows us to implement encryption that's as fast as your device could possibly handle. And we actually increase the encryption level depending on how strong and how fast your device is. You're on a faster iPhone 5S, it'll have stronger encryption than if you're on an old Android, but we'll give it a minimum that is orders of magnitude stronger than a lot of wallets that are running JavaScript, HTML as their actual backbone. We've designed our architecture such that there is no association between a user, their user information, name, email, phone number, or even public address. There's no association between a public address and a block of encrypted data. So in essence, you can't hack what you can't find. If someone knew that you had an Airbitz wallet and you received money from them and they saw that public address, they wouldn't be able to find where in our servers, if they 100% hacked our servers, they wouldn't be able to find where to try to decrypt that data. Because knowing the public address isn't good enough. They'd have to know at least your login. And then there's no unencrypted data stored on the device. And this can be a bit burdensome, but we only hold unencrypted data on the memory of the device. So if that device gets shut down, if that app gets closed, if it crashes, hopefully it doesn't, but anything along those lines, then your keys are wiped out from memory and you'd have to re-log in and decrypt your data all over again. And this is not true of a lot of the wallets that operate in a similar manner, where they store your keys on the flash storage. And if you accidentally back that up onto your computer, then you have unencrypted data on your computer that has access to your funds. And this has been a source of attacks in the past. And all of our accounts and wallets are encrypted immediately upon creation. As soon as you can receive money, they're already encrypted. They've never hit your storage without being encrypted. And as soon as an account's created, it's automatically backed up on redundant servers on the cloud. So it's backed up but fully encrypted before it leaves your device. So that's more of a safety thing, is what I call safety versus security. Safety is you're kind of saving yourself versus from an attacker. So for privacy, like I said, the low-hanging fruit is rolling addresses. So we do that instantly, automatically, and we do it behind the scenes. So every single transaction you make utilizes a different address, both for sending and for receiving. On our server, like I'd mentioned, for the sake of security, also for privacy, we don't associate public addresses and accounts. So just because you know somebody's account, even if you know their login info, you don't know what public addresses are associated with them, even with 100% access to our servers. We don't collect any user information, so we don't ask for your name, phone number, email, nothing like that. And some of the future features that we'd like to incorporate, at least over the course of the next year, are the prefix queries that I was mentioning to you guys, Tor, CoinJoin, and stealth addresses, not necessarily in that order. We'll evaluate and implement as we see what we're capable of, but it's definitely an interest to us, and we hold those strong values. Ease of use, this is the big one, right? Right now, Bitcoin is definitely not that easy to use, and that's what we hope to improve. Even though we've got a lot of technology under the hood to implement some of the security and privacy, we still want to make it easy. And right from the get-go, we make it easy to create an account. All you need is a login, a password, and a 4-digit PIN. That's it. That implements your encryption, that implements your backup, implements all of that. And there's no PDFs to print out, no passphrases to write down, None of that stuff that you see from these wallets, which are very foreign to a lot of users of traditional financial software. Oops, boo-boo right there. We allow people to create user-friendly names for their wallets, right? You can just name my wallet, Euro wallet, business wallet, whatever you'd like. And it's easy to archive. We use a little drag and drop interface. Just tap and drag between your wallets and your archive. One of the big goals in Bitcoin, people say this a whole lot, is I don't want to have to see public addresses. They're big, they're long, they're scary. They're not what people are used to. A 10-digit banking number is probably the most that people can handle. And a Bitcoin address is a 30, 40-digit alphanumeric upper lowercase number. But if you're going to get rid of addresses, which is what most wallets have you see with every transaction, you got to replace it with something else. Well, how about names and photos? And that's what we allow you to do. Tag all your transactions with the person or the business that you transacted with, and we'll try to pull a photo out of your address book to associate that with, or a photo from our business directory, and associate that with your transaction. Make it nice and friendly. And we've allowed the user to add pretty rich transactional data to each of their transactions. So you can tag it with notes, category, the fiat currency value, which is automatically put in there, and of course your payee, which is whether it's a business or a user. A new feature that we just implemented for those people with iPhones is actually the ability to pay via Bluetooth, BLE. So you don't actually need to scan with a QR code. You can stand up to 30 feet away from someone, as long as there's not too much interference, and receive a payment request that someone's broadcasted out, and then pay them over the traditional Bitcoin network. So this is a great advancement in ease of use. Gives up a little bit of privacy, arguably. Depends on how much information you want to expose. Here in this transaction, people have chosen to expose their name, but they don't have to in order to use this feature.
Is it going to be coming to Android?
It will be coming to Android. Android has not implemented BLE, at least to the level that we need it to be implemented, until version 5. iPhone has had it since version 6 of their OS, but we'd love to implement it on Android. Another aspect of ease of use. A lot of people think of ease of use, user experience as the touchy-feely stuff. How does it look? You know, what can you do? That kind of thing. But ease of use also is affected by the underlying infrastructure. So I've got more technical stuff which affects ease of use, and that the big thing is the reliability aspect. So we implement a very decentralized server architecture with a graceful fallback. There are wallets that give you full control of your private keys, but once again, you rely on a centralized server. When that server's down, you're just 100% down. You can't log into your wallet, you can't see your transactions, you can't do anything. So our architecture breaks up our servers into 3 different types. One is an SQL authentication server. So when you create an account, the account gets created on that server, just the login password and a few other additional details. They're all hashed, so we don't see them. Next are our Bitcoin transaction nodes. So those are peer-to-peer nodes. Some are hosted by us, some are hosted by other people on the network, and when you send and receive money, those are the nodes that you interact with, and you just literally need one of them to be up. And then we have our encrypted cloud storage. So that's our file sync. That's the storage of your data, your encrypted metadata, your public and private keys, but fully encrypted. And that's on a peer-to-peer network as well, but currently we host all of those nodes. So the beauty of this architecture is you need all 3 of those nodes to be up if you want to create an account or to create a wallet and send and receive money. If you want to do all of the above, all 3 of those types of servers have to be up. But if our SQL authentication server is down, you can't create a wallet and you can't create an account and you can't change your password. However, you can still synchronize between your multiple devices. So when one device edits some data, the other device will see it. If you want to send and receive money, you can still do that too. That just goes directly to the Bitcoin network. You can be on a plane and editing your transactions with no network connectivity and say, okay, well, that was food and dining that I just paid for. And that was for so-and-so. And you can see your running total. You can search your transactions with 0 connection to the internet. And then once you connect, it synchronizes up. And if our cloud storage is down, if all of Airbitz is down, you still have the transactional nodes. And there are these nodes in the network that are not owned by Airbitz. So you can still send your money out of the wallet, even if we are 100% gone. The wallet won't be that great afterwards, but you know that you can at least send and receive money. And even if that's temporary, actually, the important thing is even if that's temporary, at least if you walk up to a cafe and you want to spend funds, if Airbitz is 100% down, you can at least spend your funds. And so that, to us, is an important aspect of user experience. Yep.
What kind of features wouldn't you be able to access then?
If we were 100% down, you could still use the wallet in its entirety, except that you wouldn't get device-to-device synchronization. So you log into one device, it has all of your information, and you edit some of your metadata. That won't hit our cloud storage because if that was 100% down, and your other device wouldn't see it. It would see the transaction, because that's the Bitcoin network, but it wouldn't see the transactional metadata that you've added to that transaction. But it would be a pretty still functioning wallet, pretty well-functioning wallet, even if we were 100% down. And the nice thing is our encrypted cloud storage is peer-to-peer also. So we can host a good number of those servers, even though we're the ones that host them. And so if any of those are down, you could still access the ones that are up. So that's another beauty of that architecture. So it's a lot harder to DDoS us versus a lot of other wallets. They can DDoS our centralized SQL server, but that just means no new users during that time. But all the current users operate pretty seamlessly. Just don't change your password. I think that's one of the small things you can't do. Yep. So cool. And that's the end of the presentation. Hope you guys learned something out of that, and at least a little bit about what we do here at Airbitz and how to decide on what kind of wallet to use. If you guys have any questions, I know I glossed over some of the wallet infrastructure a bit. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away. Steve.
Is it still in beta, or can folks now download it and start playing with it, or how soon can the average user start using it?
Okay, so our iOS. So the question is, what stage is our wallet in? Are we still in beta? Can people use it? When do we launch? So our iOS is in beta, and I'm happy to announce that tonight, we are just launching our Android beta. So if anyone wants to use the Android wallet today, we can send it over to you. So we're just launching right now. Our goal is to launch probably in October to the full public on both platforms. And the wallet is near identical on both platforms. So if you like introducing people into Bitcoin, and I've met a handful of people that host meetups, and they're always setting up people with wallets. Having to set up one person with one wallet on Android versus another on iOS is always a pain for them. They want one that's seamless on both platforms. And this is it. And plus your accounts transfer across both platforms. You can create an account on iOS, log in on Android, and it just shows up. As simple as that. So it feels like online banking, but it's so not. On so many ways, it's so not. We go through a lot of work to make sure it's not, but it feels like it is. Yeah.
Does that work on an iPad?
Yep, sure does. I use it on my iPad. It looks like a phone. The iPad just kind of blows everything up. So we don't have an iPad or Android tablet specific version yet. We're just trying to get out. I mean, 2 platforms at once, building both a business directory and a wallet is quite a bit of a challenge. We're also on the web in our business directory as well. So we're doing a lot for a small startup. So we'd love to eventually get a tablet version, but we're not there yet.
So curious, you mentioned the Bitcoin addresses are hidden from. Is something I've been thinking for a long time. It'd be really nice if there's a wallet that hides these from people, so the average user isn't intimidated by those. It's also curious if there's like an advanced button you can tap on to go in and find that if you want to copy it.
You're asking, so the question was whether or not there's an advanced button inside of our UI to be able to find all those details.
And there the address if you wanted to.
There absolutely is. I believe in our transaction details you can go exactly to that. And I think you can see right there is an advanced details button. So you hit that and you get all the dorky, gobbledygook source addresses, destination addresses, inputs, outputs, all that stuff, with tap links to go into websites to show you all the transactional info. But yeah, we do have that. We know there's value in that, but most people don't want to see it, and even if they saw it, they wouldn't understand it. But yes, you can get to that information. We actually even allow you to export a CSV file, which shows every single transaction, comma delimited, with input addresses and output addresses and amounts for each of those addresses. So something that it's import friendly for financial software. You'd have to go through a little bit of work, but you can import it to like Quicken and QuickBooks, but it gives you even more information than you would necessarily need for that import. Yep.
So Paul, you mentioned your wallet only keeps unencrypted data in memory on the device.
Mm-hmm.
There are technologies available where a malicious user could take someone's device that still has unencrypted data stored in memory and scoop that memory out, analyze it, pull out your unencrypted information. My question is, have you guys considered implementing a feature that allows a user, when a device is misplaced or lost, to end their session on the device and change their information such that even if they get, if the malicious user gets their unencrypted data from their device that's been stolen, they can still log in with proper authentication and change enough information so that unencrypted data is useless?
So your question is whether or not we can, or if we thought about implementing a feature such that a person can cause another device to get wiped if they've lost that device, right? We haven't, but a lot of phones already have that in there.
Yes.
And so part of me is saying, well, we don't want to reinvent what phones typically already have. You know, I know iPhones let you do it, and some Androids let you do that as well. So we're not trying to reinvent that. I mean, if people know that they've got fairly sensitive data on their device, then put the measures in to protect it that are already built in. Because for one thing is, if our app isn't running, there's not a whole lot we can do, right? So we don't have operating system level access to the phone, whereas the phone does. So even if we could do it, the person would have to still fire up our app. And if they're trying to hack into the app, they don't need to fire up the app to hack into it. They'd probably even know not to. So there's things we could do, but I think it would be time better spent on other features because the phone can do a much better job than we can.
To be a little more clear, for example, I get my device stolen, and I just want to change my password if my device is stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Would you plan on releasing, say, a web interface where I can log onto my computer and just change my password so that if they do capture unencrypted data, that I can still access all my Airbitz funds, in the absence of my physical device?
So the question is whether or not we will launch or release a way for people to change their password like on the web using some other platform. Right now we are just about near 100% mobile-focused company, hence the name of our company. So we feel that the mobile device is one of your most secure devices. It's the least prone to malware. And especially once you offer a web interface, then you've really opened up a lot of holes. And so we know that there's a huge ease of use aspect to having a web interface or just having a desktop interface, but we're going to resist for now. We are going to be an open source platform, so people are welcome to build on top of that. But it's not something we're going to focus on. It's a wallet. It should fit in your back pocket. And if you lose it, you can go use someone else's phone, download the app, and change your password. Be aware, though, that because of our model, when a password isn't just a password when it incorporates encryption. And when there's files that are encrypted on a device, changing your password doesn't necessarily change your password on the device that you lost. So it's not helpful to change your password on a second device if the data that's encrypted on the first device that was lost is still encrypted with the same information. So it wouldn't be very effective until the device synchronized. And even then, there's still traces of the old files on that device. With our file sync architecture, we can actually roll back edits to a file. We actually use the Git architecture, which I don't know how many people here are familiar with Git for file storage or for development. But it allows us to roll back changes, but one of those changes could be the change of your password. So it changes it on the server for authentication, so someone can't log into our server and get your files if they don't already have it. But if they already have your files, then you're relying on the encryption. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a two-part question.
Sure.
First thing is, you mentioned earlier in your talk, you asked people who's running Bitcoin Core.
Yeah.
A couple of hands of it, right? And it's not really widely used because the blockchain has gotten to a state that it's so large that it takes a long time to download the process, and this is exactly the opposite thing that you want running on a mobile phone. Most phones probably couldn't even handle it. So one way around that is simplified payment verification, which you mentioned in your talk. I take it that Airbitz is not doing SPV.
So the question is whether or not Airbitz is doing SPV in our wallet. We do not do SPV. No, not the way it's. A lot of people mix the terminology of SPV as just being any light wallet that doesn't hold a blockchain. Technically, it's where you actually traverse headers of the blockchain and do like a light verification in that respect. But no, we do not do SPV.
So given that, can you talk a little bit about the decision to go to like this distributed server architecture that you talked about relative relative to allowing the network, the Bitcoin network itself, to handle all the work?
So these nodes that we're referring to, these Bitcoin nodes, those are real Bitcoin nodes.
But your SQL validation server and the other part of your network, why have your wallet talking to that kind of server infrastructure?
Let me go back to that slide. So the question is, why do we have the architecture of our current wallet such that the mobile device has to talk to this distributed architecture? So here's our architecture. So the SQL authentication server basically prevents collisions of logins, of hashed logins. So if one person creates a login, another person can't. That's primarily what it's for. And it also initiates a creation of storage on the encrypted cloud storage nodes. So when I create my account and I say I'm Paul123, right, that gets hashed, sent to the authentication server, and it goes and creates storage on these encrypted cloud storage servers for me. It creates repos, Git repos on there that allow the mobile devices to add and remove files to.
I guess what I'm getting at is what problem is this solving relative to what you could do with SPV? What's the limitation of SPV that prevents you from using it in this context?
So question being, what's the limitation of SPV? SPV is strictly to sending and receiving transactions. If you don't want to hold any other information, you don't want to hold any metadata, you don't want to know that you have multiple addresses. SPV does not solve having potentially hundreds, if not thousands of addresses all held by one wallet. So your wallet has to say, okay, this is my wallet, and in this wallet I have these 1,000 addresses, and actually infinite. We use HD, hierarchical deterministic wallets, so HD wallets, and you could potentially have near infinite addresses. And that data model needs to sit somewhere other than the blockchain, because the blockchain can't hold that. All it sees is transactions. It's strictly transactional information. All the metadata isn't there. All of the address association, the fact that I've created a wallet inside of my account, and that wallet is my checking wallet, and this other wallet is my Eurofunds wallet, and this other wallet is, my kid's savings wallet. All of that association is entirely non-Bitcoin specific. That's the Airbitz architecture. And in order for us to implement that, we need servers that will hold that data, and the blockchain can't do that.
So one way to do that would be to have the wallet itself hold that data, but it sounds like the use case you're interested in is this synchronization idea, where you can synchronize the metadata from one device to another. Is that really where this is coming?
Exactly, that's where the value is, and it's not just the synchronization of the device, but it's also the backing up. Our take is, if you want to introduce someone into Bitcoin, and you say, hey, go download this wallet, I'll send you $10 worth of Bitcoin, and they get it, and that moment they drop it and destroy the device, they shouldn't have lost their Bitcoin. All right. It should have already been backed up and already encrypted as soon as it can receive money, and that isn't implemented in the blockchain. So that's the architecture we've put together with all of these nodes and this distributed infrastructure. And other wallets do this, but they don't do it with this level of kind of decentralization or distribution. But you're right, that's exactly it, is that implementing all of that metadata and having it backed up in a distributed way is what we need to implement all of this for. And in addition to that, some of the architecture we've put together even allows people to create a wallet inside of an account and share that individual wallet with somebody else with a different account. It's not exposed in our current UI, but it's coming down the pipe. And we've built that in there because we know that that's a common usage model that people are accustomed to, like a shared checking account at a bank. So we're trying to replace the banking system here. Like, we're really trying to replace the banking system here on a mobile device. That's our goal. So we're trying to put in the infrastructure that will allow us to do that for those that choose to do that.
That hits on a question that I had, actually. So this is ultimately a wallet. How does it interact with cold storage so the non-sophisticated user can treat it like a wallet, not like a bank account where they've got all their money sitting on? Or do you think it's, with this model, it's actually safe for them to have all their money and not use cold storage?
Question is, how do we interface with cold storage with respect to our wallet, and do we even recommend cold storage? No, I still do recommend cold storage. We are a hot wallet. I don't question the fact that a hot wallet can only get so secure. I do think that we would be one of the most secure hot wallets, but we can only get so secure. So for large savings, definitely still cold storage. Our first release will not interface with cold storage in any reasonable, fun way. And cold storage is still a very advanced topic. I don't expect any newbie beginner to be able to handle using cold storage. And hate to say it, but I would almost rather that they use a hosted wallet for large storage, unless I feel comfortable kind of training them and I feel like their capabilities would allow them to handle cold storage for large amounts of their asset. But a thing that we would like to interface with in the future is to be the online version of an offline device. So how many people here have used Armory before? We got a trickle, maybe 5 or 6 people that have used Armory. So Armory implements both the offline and the the offline and the online portion of cold storage, allowing you to sign transactions offline. Unfortunately, it's not very easy to use. It's pretty cumbersome, and you've got to have 2 computers, and setting up the software is tricky and whatnot. We'd like to at least take care of the online half of that, the hot wallet portion of that, and interface with software like Armory using something convenient, whether it be audio communication or whatnot, to try to keep that as secure as possible. But right now we don't have any like immediate release 1 or maybe even release 2 plans. But heck, if we could, we'd build our own device that's offline. We'd love to do it. If anyone is interested and has a passion for like building out the Bitcoin ecosystem, we'd love to work with someone that's looking at building an offline hardware wallet that can do offline signing, and we can be the online version of that, or the thing that pairs with that offline device. But does that answer your question?
Definitely.
Cool.
Just a second quick question, Paul. For your SQL authentication server encryption including cloud storage architecture, have you considered implementing in the future such a way that other users or other entities not associated with Airbitz can host that data to help further decentralize your organization, and possibly you could share or incentivize them via some portion of the other fees associated with maintaining data for you? Have you considered that?
We've considered it. We actually, so the question is, have we considered having some other entities host the encrypted cloud storage? We've considered it. The challenge is that once we open up to other people, then other people have access to the encrypted data of everyone else. And so we realize, yes, it's encrypted, so it should be okay, but it's never a good thing to just hand over a blob of encrypted data to everyone. So that is kind of where we're at, is that, well, do we want to just hand over the keys, not the decryption keys, but basically the keys into our server to a bunch of other people, as opposed to at least relying on a much more closed ecosystem to host it. A thing that we have considered is the ability for a user to host their own node on the encrypted network and host just their data. So their phone would sync up with their laptop, and their laptop would host a Git node that would sync up just their data, in addition to our cloud storage hosting their data as well. So that's something that we have considered for people that want to be able to host their own backup. And that way, if they're offline in the woods with their laptop and their phone, I don't know if that'd be useful at all, but they would have a backup of their phone for whatever metadata they happen to edit while they're in that cabin. So we've thought about that. It's something that's actually very doable with our architecture, but it takes work. It's not a rehaul at all. It's going to take a little bit of work, and it's not something that's priority because our focus is what we call the next billion Bitcoin users, and the next billion Bitcoin users aren't going to want to run a node on their computer to host their backup. Like, we're thinking, what does mobile banking feel like? We want to make it feel like that, but not be mobile banking. Yeah, cool.
Can you do like a paper wallet with this?
We cannot print out a paper wallet. So the question is, can we do a paper wallet? Right now, you can't. So we may throw that into a future release, but there's many other tools out there that will print a paper wallet for you that it wouldn't be a huge advantage for us to do. And once again, it's also somewhat of a more advanced feature. But we may throw that in there in the future. Cool. All right, I think that's it. Thanks a whole lot, guys. Thanks for coming. If you guys have any questions afterwards, feel free to ask.